Hello, everyone. This is a letter that I saw going through social media, and this is a letter by Dr. Frank Schallenberger, and he makes several points that are mostly very good points, and his points did not have any crazy things like the vaccine is going to implant tiny nano robots to control your mind, or it's going to turn you into a bat chimera or something like that. So it wasn't completely crazy. So um, I thought that I would kind of go through it and give some comments about the letter. So he says, "Dear patients and friends, last week I must have been asked 20 times about the new COVID vaccines. Here are my thoughts. Please pass this information on as to many you can. People need to be fully informed consent when it comes to injecting foreign genetic material into their bodies." Absolutely agree. People should get as much information as possible, and they should make an informed decision about whether or not they want to get these vaccines. Absolutely agree with that. Um, the COVID vaccines are mRNA vaccines. Okay, so I'm assuming that he means the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, which are mRNA vaccines. They are the two that are the first out of the gate. There are more vaccines coming down the pipeline. The AstraZeneca vaccine and the Janssen vaccine are DNA vaccines, and the Novavax vaccine is a um, protein-based vaccine. And then there are like 70 more COVID vaccines down the pipeline. They're everything from inactivated virus to attenuated virus to viral particles, more DNA and RNA vaccines coming down the pipeline. So all different technologies are being used. So not all COVID vaccines are mRNA vaccines. It's just these first two that are in the press right now are mRNA vaccines. So that's what I'm assuming he's talking about. mRNA vaccines are a completely new type of vaccine. 100% true. Yes, mRNA vaccines are a completely new thing and have not been used in people before. No mRNA vaccine has ever been licensed for human use for. Yep. So Pfizer vaccine is the first mRNA vaccine licensed for human use in the history of the human race. So he says, in essence, we have absolutely no idea what to expect from this vaccine. We have no idea if it will be effective or safe. Okay, so this is not true. I mean, we have a pretty good idea of what to expect from this vaccine, at least in the short term. We have a very good idea of what to expect from the vaccine. We know exactly how effective it is in the first 2-3 months after use, and we have a really good idea of how safe it is in the first 2 or 3 months. Now, if he said we don't know what to expect from this vaccine years from now, or how effective it will be and how safe it will be years from now, that is in many ways true. We don't have the data to say that. No one's had this vaccine in their body for 2-3 years to know what if there are any long-term effects. Now, do we have absolutely no idea what to expect? No. Like, we've been studying these mRNA delivery systems and mRNAs for a long time, and we know in vitro and in vivo kind of what to expect. Now, like I said before, in vitro and in vivo does not translate to people. But to say that we have absolutely no idea is probably a little bit of a hyperbole. So we have a very good idea of the short-term effects and not as good an idea of the long-term effects. We assume that it's safe, but our assumptions might be wrong, and that's absolutely true. Okay, so traditional vaccines simply introduce pieces of the virus to stimulate the immune system. The new mRNA vaccine is completely different. It actually injects or transfects molecules of synthetic genetic material from non-human sources into our cells. Once in the cells, the genetic material interacts with our transfer RNA to make a foreign protein that supposedly teaches the body to destroy the virus being coded for. Note that these newly created proteins are not regulated by our own DNA, or thus completely foreign to our cells. What they're fully capable of doing is unknown. Okay, so number two, this is kind of, I think, a good example of like accurate information without context. How accurate information without context can be misleading. Because this sounds terrible, right? But what the context is this situation has happened to every single one of us, because this is essentially what all viruses do. Okay, so an a virus, what it does is it transfects molecules of genetic material from non-human sources into our cells. That's what a virus does. Once in the cell, the viral genetic material interacts with our protein production machinery and makes foreign proteins. And then those foreign proteins are not regulated by our own DNA, and they are completely foreign to our cells. And yeah, and what they are fully capable of doing is unknown. Yeah, we can't know everything. We have a pretty good idea of what these things do, but we don't 100% know. So yeah, if you've ever had the flu, the cold, warts, cold sores, or any viral infection, mumps, or mono, you've um, you've had this. You've had this happen to you. So this is not a this is not like a crazy thing that has never happened to any person before. This happens to people, millions of people every single day. So this is but as an mRNA vaccine, it is different. It is different than other vaccines. The traditional vaccines that we're used to, DTaP, MMR, IPV, those are generally use either inactivated or attenuated whole virus, or sometimes protein parts of the virus. The most common ones are either inactivated virus or attenuated virus, which are viruses that are weakened. So those attenuated vaccines can actually make you sick. It's theoretically possible, whereas the protein viruses, the protein vaccines and the inactivated vaccines should not be able to make you sick. And also, the mRNA vaccines cannot make you sick. They cannot give you COVID. Yeah, they can't give you the disease that it's trying to vaccinate you for. Okay, number 3, the mRNA molecule is vulnerable to destruction. So in order to protect the fragile mRNA strands while they're being inserted into our DNA, they are coated with a pegylated lipid nanoparticles. This coating hides the mRNA from our immune system, which would ordinarily kill any foreign material injected into the body. True. Pegylated lipid nanoparticles have been used in several drugs for years. Not true. Because their effect on immune system balance, several studies have shown to induce allergies and autoimmune diseases. Additionally, pegylated lipid nanoparticles have been shown to trigger their own immunoreactions and to cause damage to the liver. Okay, so I am going to have to look into this further because I'm not very well versed on this. So I will probably have another video kind of going into this because I think this is a very interesting topic. What I do know for sure is that these lipid nanoparticles have not been used in several different drugs for years. There's exactly one drug that has been approved using this technology, and it was first approved in late 2018. It is a drug to treat some kind of amyloidosis, but I'll talk about it in the next video. So this we'll come back to. Probably some element of truth to that, because you know why? It's a drug, and every drug has some kind of toxicity. Now, when you're talking about a vaccine is given to healthy people. So a vaccine has to have a really, really good safety profile because you're essentially treating healthy people with a drug. So it has to have a really good safety profile. Whereas, like, let's say a drugs that we give cancer patients, we tolerate up to like 10% fatality rates in some of the chemotherapy regimens we give cancer patients, because if we don't give it to them, we figure it's like basically 100% fatality rate. So we figure that a 10% fatality rate is better than a 100% fatality rate. But for a vaccine, most people are going to have a close to 100% survival rate because they're healthy. So you really need to have a very, very safe, a very safe drug to use as a vaccine. So I think safety is definitely something that's very important in vaccines, and so these are legitimate concerns. So we should kind of look into this further. Okay, new vaccines are additionally contaminated with aluminum, mercury, and possibly formaldehyde. Manufacturers have not yet disclosed what other toxins they contain. Okay, so that is pretty easy to find out. You just go into here and you say, what is in the Pfizer vaccine? Okay, so here you go, right here. Let's look down here. Okay, what are the ingredients in the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine? So the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine includes the following ingredients: mRNA, right? Lipids, but these are the lipids. I cannot pronounce this stuff. but this is the lipids right here. Then potassium chloride. This is just the regular salt. Monobasic sodium phosphate. This is a buffer. Buffers are used just to control the pH in the thing. This is a very common buffer that's used in labs. You could drink or inject this stuff. It's not a problem. Sodium chloride, that's salt. Dibasic sodium phosphate dihydrate. This is also part of this buffer. And sucrose, that's just sugar. So these things right here are completely inert in our body. You can inject them. As long as you don't inject large quantities to throw off your electrolyte balance, you're going to be fine. And then this right here is the lipid nanoparticle. And then what is in the Moderna vaccine? Let's see, does this have it? Yeah, I think this is the Moderna EUA that was just done yesterday, where they submitted this paperwork to get that emergency use authorization. This is going through their entire phase 3 trial. I'm not. Let's see if there's an easier way to find what's in there. Some place is going to list what the ingredients are. Okay, so that one doesn't tell us. Okay, maybe this one. Tell us. Okay, here you go. This one. So this one's telling us this is what's in the Pfizer vaccine. So we just saw that list already. And here is in the Moderna vaccine. So mRNA, this is their lipid nanoparticle configuration, which is slightly different. But basically, you see kind of the same things. They both have cholesterol. They both have PEG, polyethylene glycol 2000, polyethylene glycol 2000, and some lipids. And then they have tromethamine hydrochloride, acetic acid, this is vinegar, sodium acetate, and sucrose. Okay, and then this tromethamine is a buffer. Those of us that have worked in a molecular biology lab, this is called tris buffer in the lab, so it's a very common buffer that's used. So this is kind of like the phosphate buffer. So there's phosphate buffer is a very common buffer used, and tris buffer is a very common buffer that's used just to control the pH. Okay, so what we see here is there's definitely no there's no aluminum, there's no mercury, and there's no formaldehyde. And the manufacturers have disclosed what's in there. Okay, since viruses mutate frequently, the chance of any vaccine working for more than a year is unlikely. This is why the flu vaccine changes every year. Last year's vaccine is no more valuable than last year's newspaper. Again, I think a little bit of confusion here. So the flu vaccine does change every year because the flu mutates every year, and the flu has these two particles called hemagglutinin and neuraminidase, which recombine. That's why you have like the H1N1 or H2N1 or H3N2. That changes every year, and they kind of guess what's going to be the dominant flu that year. And since it takes about 6 months to create a flu vaccine, they have to start creating it back in spring for it to be ready for the fall flu season. So they're just kind of guessing. Some years they guess pretty well, some years they guess really poorly, and the flu vaccine is not very good at all. So the flu changes every year, and so that's why the flu vaccine has to be changed every year. However, those vaccines that we give our kids, MMR vaccine, IPV vaccine, these are the same vaccines that have been used for decades. Those are the same. So those are the exact same vaccines for the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years that we've used. And so those viruses do not mutate frequently. And what the thing is that most viruses have some conserved parts of their outer shell that need to stay the same for them to work as a virus. And as long as you target those, then you're going to be okay. So the flu vaccine is kind of the anomaly in vaccines. Most vaccines are the same year after year after year. They haven't changed. Okay, so absolutely no long-term safety studies have been done to ensure any of these vaccines don't cause cancer, seizures, all kinds of terrible sounding things. If you want to be a guinea pig for big pharma, now is your golden opportunity. So true. Yes, no long-term safety studies have been done with these new mRNA vaccines. That is ongoing. Their phase 3 trials, they are going to conduct safety data for the next 3 years, but they've collected exactly 2-3 months of data, and they're moving forward with an emergency use authorization. So long-term safety studies have not been done. It is, I mean, you can list all kinds of crazy things that they might cause, and it's not to say that it's impossible for them to cause them, and maybe they will in some small instance. We just don't know. And you could list all kinds of things in here, and it would be a true statement. We don't know if the vaccines cause your leg to fall off. I mean, it could happen, I guess. Um, okay, many experts. So from here, he just quotes different experts saying, I worry about the innovation at the expense of practicality. This person saying, I won't be taking the vaccine immediately, probably not for the coming year. So, I mean, yeah, you can get recognized experts that have varied opinions. It's, someone could find an expert that says, yes, I'm absolutely taking the vaccine, and it's wonderful and it's great, and I'm not worried at all. That's not really that useful. What might be useful is if they polled all the vaccine experts in the world and we found out that like 90% of them are worried about it. I would definitely pay attention to that. Um, but picking out one or two people that say one thing, that's pretty easy to find an expert in a field that has a different view than the majority of the field. And I don't know what the majority opinion here is because I haven't seen any information about that. Okay, it's November 2020, Washington Post had a poll among healthcare workers, and people are worried. Yeah, I mean, healthcare workers are basically people, and we're going to have different opinions about the vaccine. It is a new vaccine, and there are some legitimate concerns about it. So about whether long-term safety. So I'm not surprised that there's some hesitancy. I mean, I have some hesitancy. Since the death rate from COVID resumed to normal flu rate way back in early 17, the pandemic has been over since then. Therefore, at this point, no vaccine is needed. The current scare. Okay, so let's start with that. That's just not true. I mean, he says go look at the CDC data. If you go to the CDC site, you can see weekly death rates. Here's the weekly death rates, and here is you can see this brown line. This is the threshold of if if you go over this, then they say there's something odd going on. And so you see there's a flu season, and just everything. There's more deaths in the winter for various reasons. Flu, pneumonia, people get sicker. So there's kind of a wax and wane every year. You see, like right here, the winter of 2018 was kind of a bad year. There was some bad, and then here, this is 2020, around late March, early April. You see that we are consistently above the line. In September, here's September. September we got pretty low. We were down fairly close to the ground line, but then yep, we're back up. And then this data, if you look here, it says data are incomplete because of the lag in time between when the deaths occurred and when the death certificate is completed, submitted to NCSHS, and processed for reporting. This delay can range from 1 to 8 weeks. So 1 to 8 weeks here, we haven't gotten all the complete data. Like back here, we're complete, but these last 1 to 8 weeks, they're going to keep adding deaths. So these numbers are definitely higher. So that's just not true that the death rate is back to normal. It's not. Current scare tactics are escalating cases based on PCR tests that exceed 35 applications has a 100% false positive rate. Okay, if I want to be completely semantic about it, you can't have a test with 100% false positive rate. I could have a test that says that everyone is positive. There's no way for that to have a 100% false positive rate unless COVID does not exist in the world. Because even if a test just called everyone positive, every once in a while it will be right. Just like a broken clock is right twice a day, it will be right. So it won't be a 100% false positive rate. So it's impossible to have 100% false positive rate. He's saying, I think what he's saying is there's a really high false positive rate. And I think he's kind of confusing the information of when someone has had COVID, you can get positive tests after they are no longer shedding virus and no longer transmissible because the PCR test is very sensitive. Um, and it will pick up dead viral particles and pieces of the nucleic acids that are sitting around in people and amplify them and give you a positive test. That definitely happens. Um, but it doesn't have a 100% false positive rate, because if it did, everyone you would test would be positive, right? Everyone. And then from the state data that the positivity rates range anywhere from 6%, so it's calling 94% negative, to 30-40% in the high positivity rate areas. So it is not one. This is just not true. Um, the other reason you don't need a vaccine for COVID-19 is that substantial herd immunity has already taken place in the United States. This is the prime reason for the end of the pandemic. Also, I mean, like we showed here, pandemic's not over, and right now, actually, the pandemic is probably the worst it's been since it started. My hospital is completely full, and every hospital in Southern California is completely full. We're closing down satellite OR sites and doing only emergency and urgent surgeries, and we're pulling nurses from all over just to man the floors. It's kind of crazy, actually. So this is not true. The pandemic is not over. Anyone who works at a hospital will tell you that. Unfortunately, you can't trust the media. Okay, I mean, I don't know what to say about that. Sure. Um, they have consistently got it wrong for the past year. Mm, that's, I guess, up to how you're reading the media. And I mean, they're definitely bad at reporting science. I will admit that media is really, really bad at reporting science, and reporting things with nuance. So it's very easy to get a skewed view of what's going on. Very interested to see verification from Bill and Melinda Gates. Okay. Um, Anyone who reading this who wants to get injected with mRNA should, at the very least, get their bloods checked for COVID-19 antibodies. There's no need for a vaccine in person who's not already naturally immunized. So that's a valid statement. Yeah, it might be true. It's unclear now what is the better immunity. Is natural immunity better than vaccine immunity in COVID-19, or is vaccine immunity better than natural immunity? Because in certain diseases, it's different. Like there's certain vaccines that give you better immunity than the actual getting the disease. And there's other diseases where getting the disease definitely gives you better immunity than the vaccine. In this case, we don't know. We don't know what the case is. Vaccine might be better, or natural infection might be better. Okay, here's his bottom line. He'd much rather get COVID infection than the COVID vaccine. That would be safer and more effective. So not accurate, because what is the fatality rate of getting the COVID infection? It is very low. It's like 0.3%. Let's see, calculator. All right, so we know that the Pfizer study had about 45,000 people, so about 22,000 of them got the vaccine, and the Moderna study had 30,000 people, and about 15,000 of them got the vaccine. So that's 37,000 people we know have gotten the vaccine. There's no deaths associated with the vaccine in 37,000 people. Let's say the very next person dies. Then you have a 1 in 37,000 chance of dying from the vaccine. That is 0.0000027. So that would be in percent 0.00027. No, 0.0027. So that's way less. It's way less. So it's not safer. And we know now that millions of healthcare workers have been injected over the past several days, and we'll see what happens. Like I said, for vaccine, you have to be very safe, and I'm sure that there are going to be some bad reactions to it, because I mean, it's a drug. Every drug has some rate of toxicity. And if the rate of toxicity is like 1 in a million, which would be a very safe drug, if you if you treat 300 million people, you're going to have a bad reaction in 300 people. That's not an insignificant number of people. So it is a very high bar in a vaccine for safety. But anyway, I think that this had a lot of good points, especially at the beginning, talking about what we don't know about the mRNA vaccines, which, yeah, these are completely new things. And then it um, kind of veered away from accuracy, talking about how the pandemic's over and there's herd immunity and the tests are 100% not not accurate, how the vaccines have formaldehyde and heavy metals. So those are all not just those are verifiably not true. Okay, so I will be making another video about the lipid nanoparticles because I'm kind of interested in that, and maybe someone else is as well. So thanks for watching.